Atkinson, the guy that runs it, here he is now. If mainstream sports are defined by how many zeros are attached to the economic impact of it, this is mainstream. So Jeff Atkinson, President of Honda Indy Toronto, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Awesome. So in a nutshell, give me an idea generally, since it's international, out of IndyCar racing today, its health. We'll talk about the Toronto race a little later.
Yeah, no, so IndyCar racing is very strong in North America and internationally. You know, the race series is televised to 185 countries worldwide, and for us, you know, we're so lucky to be able to attract a lot of those people to the city of Toronto come our July weekend. You know, we own races in St. Petersburg, Florida, in Mid-Ohio, with the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Cars in Toronto. And we look at the numbers, and just the international and multinational presence is very important. You know, in St. Pete, we draw 49 of 50 states. In Toronto, it's about 10 of 13 provinces and territories. And that's on top of the international exposure.
Economic impact. Do we have a standardized number that is a metric that's consistent over time as far as what the Indy race brings to Toronto?
It varies race to race. You know, attendance has a big part of that. I think the big thing with us, before one ticket is sold, you have all the race teams coming to buy hotel rooms. They're going to our restaurants. And with that, you know, it's just not one race series. You know, the Verizon IndyCar Series is our feature attraction, as is the NASCAR Pinty Series. But there are 4 or 5 other series that support that weekend. So that number can vary for anywhere from basically $40 million to $50 million over a course of a 3 or 4 or 5 day period.
Now, your entity, again, a little bit of understanding what your structure is. You own the race in Toronto and Ohio and Florida. Mm-hmm. So you have a good idea of the pulse of what open wheel racing looks like across North America. Good shape, bad shape, improving shape, challenges?
It's very much in improving shape. You know, I think the series has come a long way in the past decade. In 2008 was a milestone year for the Verizon IndyCar Series when they merged with the Champ Car World Series. And I think since then, I think we've seen more American drivers participate, which is key for the American markets.
Are the demographics for IndyCar similar or different than NASCAR's demographics?
You know, the demographics do vary a little bit, and we do have a NASCAR race at Mid-Ohio for the NASCAR Xfinity Series, so we can see how those events operate. You know, but they do vary a little bit, but at the end of the day, there's still a core attribute that's similar, and that's they're a race fan. They're coming out to watch the sport that they cheer for. You can probably break down the race fans' enjoyments within that, but at the same time, you know, really the demographic is going to skew male. It will, but you know, I think at the end of the day, the IndyCar audience is probably a little bit different than the NASCAR audience.
Now, tell me how it all relates to Formula One.
Well, you know, Formula One is a different event in a nutshell. You know, they, I think, like IndyCar, attract a worldwide audience. F1 in its own landscape is very worldwide, whereas IndyCar, they don't have any international races right now, but that's something they've talked about wanting to get back in. Canada's their only international race, and they very much view Canada as a North American race. So F1's definitely on a different level, but at the same time, you know, IndyCar very much creates and has a core group, a fan base, just like F1 has, but they're just different groups of people.
Give me in a nutshell, without a kind of woe is me, look at all the work I've got to do, but I don't think people understand the nature of putting on a street race in the middle of a downtown to hold how many spectators?
Over 103,000.
All right, explain how you sleep at night before that event.
Well, it's tough. You know, it's a weird business model. Unlike some of the other sports where you have an arena to play in, you know, we build our event from the ground up, especially in St. Petersburg and Toronto. So, you know, for us, it really comes down to how do we create as little impact on the community as possible. So, you know, a lot of things we have done here is in Toronto is to really do our construction overnight, so we're not impacting the traffic as we're building our racetrack. And then when it's time that the race is around, you know, the fans really embrace the event and come out to celebrate this great and wonderful community event. So we're very cognizant of how we're impacting the community, and we very much want to celebrate with the people that live down here, and the event's a great channel to do so.
Is there some kind of a synergy between presidents or heads of respective large events in a community? Do you talk to the Pan Am Games organizers 2 years ago? Do you talk to the owners of the Raptors and the Leafs, et cetera, on a regular basis? Is there a best practices kind of process?
Yeah, I think the best practice is just trying to be aware of what's going on around you. Mm-hmm. And that can really be, you know, what's going around in the United States, in Canada, worldwide. What are the trends? What are you seeing? And each property is very much different. The 3 races that we own, they all the same attribute, and that's IndyCar. But for us, the markets are all three different markets in terms of demographics. Toronto skews a little bit younger, definitely more international flavor. So the way you market to a Toronto event is very different to how you market a St. Petersburg event. So when you look at the other events in the community around the world and throughout North America, you really try to, absorb and be a sponge when you're communicating with other leaders in the community to see what best practices are so you can elevate your event.
Everybody is worried about the reduction in ratings. NFL's an example. I'm not sure, nobody's sure if it was the election or if it's the teams and all of that. Is there a general concern across sports promoters that people are finding other things to do, or is that not the case?
I think we're all concerned with the changing landscape of TV, but at the same time, I think some of the viewing habits are changing. I think people are still tuning into the TV. They might not be watching for the entire duration. They might be watching on their mobile device, which is definitely a very big trend now, especially with some demographic that we wanted to capture. But I think the thing about our event that's really different than some of the other events, we're not reliant on TV because we have a festival. Unlike the arena sports that you're just there to watch the game, you're there at our events to interact with products, different activations, interactive exhibits, and that's just so key to our brand. So if we're out trying to price a sign for the broadcast, that's great, but the activation that a sponsor is going to activate on your event site, that holds a significant value as part of that partnership.
Part of a downtown auto race promoter is the best seats in the house you can't control, because if you're on a law firm 35th floor, you can't get access to that. But boy, those people really enjoy watching you, don't they?
They do, and that's where, whether people are attending the event or maybe watching from afar, we want people to think positively about us and have a good time surrounding the activities with the event, whether it be down at Exhibition Place or in the city of Toronto.
Where is the business of open wheel racing 10 years from now?
I think open wheel racing is very much on a growth phase, and I really think the technologies continue to change. Innovation's been a key part of open wheel racing over the years, and I think as we grow and have successful promoters and successful race teams and successful series, I think we can grow together. We're, as a company, Green Savvy Racing Promotions, we're very eager to grow the sport, and we apply the efficiencies and the economies of scale at our St. Petersburg property, our Toronto property, and Meadowhouse Sports Car Course. So we have the passion to grow the sport. The series very much have the passion to grow their end of the thing, and the race teams do as well. So if it fires, and pardon the race pun, on all cylinders, we can grow this together, and it's definitely on the right path.
Jeff Atkinson, really appreciate the time. The only kind of event that'll allow you to actually go through red lights in the middle of a downtown metropolitan area and love it. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thanks again.